Morning everyone, there's Alcatraz. We're going to be climbing around and hiking on Angel Island. It's old Fort Rawlings, Fort Garrison. It's all abandoned. That's what we're checking out today on the island. We've already investigated Alcatraz. We're going to be going back next year to do the other half of it. It's a pretty large place. And that's Mount Livermore. And that, you can't really see all the structures on the island, but on that's East Fort Garrison, Fort Rawlings right there. And of course, on the other end is the Civil War fort, which is blocked. And on the beyond the peak on the other side is a quarantine station. There's a quarantine station and an immigrant station. So it'll take us about 20 minutes to get out to the island. We're going to be taking a ferry over, obviously. Oh wow, this is the wharf. We have our hotel on the wharf. Up here? You can go up here? Oh wow. Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lord Rick of the Paranormal Ghost Society. We're heading to, not Alcatraz straight ahead, but the island behind it known as Angel Island. And Angel Island is known as the Ellis Island of the West. They have multiple facilities here. Angel Island. Just keep in mind, folks, Angel Island has a couple abandoned hospitals, military barracks, Civil War fort, a detention center, a quarantine station. Almost 2,500 immigrants were processed per day. The Chinese were persecuted here, definitely. A lot of history. Those buildings you just seen are some of the finest, two of the finest structures, or most preserved structures from the Civil War, the days of the Civil War. On the west side of the island there is the fort. There's for everyone. Some of the finest Civil War buildings in the state are found in Angel Island. Wow. Excuse me. Oh, wow. Hospital Cove. Oh, wow. This is a quarantine station, ladies and gentlemen. It was built in 1891. It's called Hospital Cove, renamed to Ayala Cove. The ships from the foreign ports arrived, they fumigated them. Immigrants who had diseases like smallpox, yellow fever, were put in isolation. They were put in isolation anyways. This is with the Ellis Island of the West. Only difference is the Ellis Island is San Francisco Bay rather than the Hudson Bay. You know? It says that the U.S. Omaha and its boilers were used to supply a superheated steam for fumigation. Her mast cropped as large as a covered structure was added to her deck. The mast cropped and a large cover structure was added to her deck to house diseased immigrants and sailors. There was 40 buildings at the cove and 400 beds, and it could process a couple thousand people a day, I'm sure. There was a disinfection plant, laboratories, they had staff quarters, all that good stuff. And the first ship to be quarantined here was the Chinese. They were heavily discriminated upon when they arrived. And when they arrived, they were checked in, a doctor would examine them, they bathed them with carbolic soap, put in overalls, put their clothing in a metal cylinder, disinfected it. Yeah, they had to process these people before they were physically let go and able to travel the countryside. And then he'd keep the passengers for about 14 days or 2 weeks in quarantine. Fumigate the barracks with some sulfur dioxide. Flushed it with salt water every morning. Ships were fumigated. Huh? Oh. Ow. God damn it. Yes, that hurt like hell. Angel Island, 1775, the packet of San Carlos, first known Spanish ship to enter San Francisco Bay, and shored in this cove while our commander, Lieutenant Juan Manuel de Ayala, it's not Avila, that's why it was named after the explorer, the bay, directed the first survey of the bay. Ayala named this island as the Isle de los Angeles. The island has been a Mexican rancho, U.S. military bay defense site, and both quarantine and immigration station, as I was saying earlier. But eventually, as medicine had improved, which it did, but when the medicine had improved, this place was no longer needed. Actually, the U.S. Public Health Service, which succeeded the old U.S. Marine Health Service, was moved to San Francisco instead. In 1946, the station was declared surplus and all functions were moved to Frisco instead of the island. And in 1957, 3 years after Cove became a park, 4 quarantine stations, all but 4 of the quarantine stations, 40-odd buildings were razed, so only 4 exist. There are some employee residence, which the state park now uses. The disinfecting cylinders are long gone, and most of the grounds were bulldozed or demolished. Wow! Pretty nice, huh? I thought you couldn't go in none of this.
No, the immigration station.
Yes, the quarantine station. U.S. quarantine station, established 1891, which I've already talked about. Like I said, the Chinese and Japanese. I said, well, there's 3 large barracks for steerage passengers, 2 for Chinese, 1 for Japanese. There's 2 long bathhouses, 1 for a cabin, 1 for steerage passengers. This is what it looked like before all the buildings were demolished. There's 40 buildings on site. Wow. The plague. Of course the Native Americans were here first. The Miwok used to fish, hunt, and gather shellfish, mussels, clams, sea animals, sea lions, sea otters off the island. Huh. This is pretty cool, son. After Soror, Camp Reynolds became a recruit depot. As Indians continue to resist loss of the islands, removal to reservations, military attention was drawn from foreign threats to battles at home. Oh yeah. We're inside the immigration. We're inside the quarantine station, everyone. It's pretty cool. This building's rather extensive, everyone. I mean, it is very... a basement. But they had a surgeon, or a chief medical officer, inspectors, fumigators, and it was quite the operation that was here. Jared, here's a path right here. But you have to understand that they handled everything. For example, venereal diseases such as gonorrhea and syphilis, parasites, trachoma. Oh man, this island's got some rough terrain. But yeah, the Miwoks had inhabited before it was turned into a quarantine station, military compound. Also, chlamydia was dealt with here, spread by dirty water and eye-seeking flies. I mean, they tried to handle a little bit of everything here. A lot of diseases. Yellow fever, Spanish flu, smallpox, diphtheria. A lot of these diseases killed kids in these local western towns that we've investigated. They even had a death from beriberi, whatever that is. About 40 ships came to the station per week. These three houses were built between 1899 and 1893 for the U.S. Marine Hospital Service. The homes in the Visitor Center building below are remaining evidence of the bustling quarantine station. Here, I want to check out those and we can go. We'll be done. There's only four buildings on site. I'm sure these have some ghost stories. They're pretty creepy looking houses. We don't get a lot of time at these locations because if we miss the ferry, we're stuck here. And I would camp, but the weather wasn't too good, so there was a beriberi epidemic that broke out. Some people believe it was caused by a vitamin B deficiency or a vitamin B6. But they did keep the diseases down. They did, so it's pretty remarkable. Pretty nice. Pretty creepy houses, man. That's all I gotta say about that. The porch. Wow. Classic. It took 3 weeks to make a journey across the Pacific Ocean from Hong Kong and China. And traveling here was very harsh. Immigrants came from Russia, Philippines, Portugal, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, Latin America. See, people say it's Ayala. I don't know. But during the Civil War, there was an outpost here. It wasn't just an immigration station. Prior to that, immigrants really weren't coming in San Francisco because they didn't have an immigrant station. That's why they call it Hospital Cove, because this was of sorts a hospital. Most of the immigrants came from China. And of course, there was a first act called the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, and so they limited the immigration on the basis of nationality and race. But later, that act would fail, and of course, they just said, hey, let's build an immigration station. And there you go. As much as I like to spend some time, we're going to have to go. You have to understand, the great thing about America is immigration. And of course, I don't agree with everything Trump talks about, Donald Trump. We're in the middle of the primaries right now. But it's the immigrants that made America great. You have to understand that people that came here were clergies, diplomats, politicians, teachers, students, laborers. They all contributed. They all built the Wild West. All these towns that exist today were built by the Chinese. The railroad was built by the Chinese. The towns, like Bodie and Virginia City, were built by the Chinese and other immigrant groups as well. But the Chinese were targeted. See, Chinese immigrants work very cheap, and they were a threat because they worked for low wages. They were a threat to the white man. It's like the Native Americans. They weren't really a threat. Hospital Cove, or Ayala Cove. But that was a problem. There was a lot of hate towards the Chinese. And so people seen them as a threat. And so I kind of have to understand. I mean, there was just a lot of hate in the world back then. A lot of prejudiced people against blacks and the Irish. And this station had its own power, lighting, and water pipe system. Dormitories, hospital, dining facilities, there was administration building. This area processed about 2,500 immigrants per day. About 40 ships. There's sea lions? No, oh man. I did not see that. Good eye. Bunch of sea lions. But when you stopped on the island, you had to have a medical exam, just like Ellis Island. For parasites, they would check, any diseases, they'd interrogate you. Imagine being an immigrant here, and you came here and you had fear. You had fear because you'd be interrogated and subjected to disinfectant and back before they destroyed the structures, the immigrants were writing on the walls messages to their loved ones. They thought they were going to be executed because some of them had diseases. Cute. Do you see the sea lions, dude? There's like a fat one, and he like stared up at me, and the little one next to him did. The little one, dude, the cheeks are going up and down the cheeks, and he's just like a Cadbury bunny. He's like, bah, 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 bah. It's so adorable, dude. It's so adorable. I zoomed in. There's a lot of nature. Keep in mind that this is a nature sanctuary for bird preservation, wildlife, turtles, all that, man. Sea lions. I mean, I'm sure that sharks swim up in here, too. It is part of the ocean, the bay, regardless of what people like to think and be like, there's no such thing as sharks in the bay in Frisco. Bullshit, this is the ocean, man. There's all kinds of sharks. So we're done here, and I want everyone to keep in mind one little thing. All the people that came through this station moved on to ghost towns like Bodie in Virginia City and Truckee. We're going to go ahead, we're going to leave the immigration station. But every person that came through during the 1890s and early 1900s that came through this immigration station and quarantine station,
They moved on to be American citizens, some very prominent. But they had to go through the process, just like Ellis Island. They had to go through the process. Next stop we're going to be heading, it's a very interesting little stop. We're going to be going to a detention center, and then we're going to be moving on to Fort Rawlings, which the whole island basically is named Fort Rawlings. And if you want to really separate them, each one had, their east, north, and west garrison, if you just want to keep it simple. Or you can call them by their respective names, such as Fort Reynolds, or Camp Reynolds, which was a prisoner war camp until the 1890s and during the Civil War. You also had cholera and yellow fever here at the quarantine station. They just wanted to keep the infectious diseases out of the U.S. when the immigrants came. Now we're going to go hiking, but up here there should be some more places to check out. There's a lot of little secrets. This is a big island. There's a lot to explore, and it does have a peak. It's only a few hundred feet tall, but it's still a steep. You can see it's kind of steep back here. And we're going to be going to immigration detention, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about the immigration center coming up. There's a huge plaque at the entrance, and there's only one building. Most of the buildings on the island, folks, were torn down. Basically, there was 40 buildings in Hospital Cove, and now there's only 4. Same thing with the detention center. Dozens of buildings, all gone. It's just history lost. So what little remains, I'm glad the state's doing what they can to preserve it when they acquired the property. Because I am all about preservation. I think they've done a good job. The Miwoks used to hunt and fish on this island. Mud. They used to hunt and they used to fish. It's a beautiful island, man. It's like being in the jungle on some remote jungle island. It's so overgrown. But you have Fort McDowell on the east end and Fort Reynolds on the west end. Originally it was named Fort Reynolds because of the Civil War fort. And then of course you had the east garrison, which later was changed to Fort McDowell. And then you had the north garrison. Wow. So we're going to keep climbing. It's very steep. The whole island's steep. This is a Pacific Ocean. Everything's steep. The cliffs, the trikes. Even though the mountains aren't very high, they're very steep. So we're going to go ahead and this is during the Spanish-American War. A Philippine insurrection grew on the island due to a post-processing men on their way to and from overseas duty. The detention camp was established on the east side of the island, next to the quarry. And we'll talk about it a little more, which later was changed into Fort Rawlings. Wow. There we go. Here. Oh, that's just a rock. Huh? We just got to follow it, go over to the end. Because we're going to be going to the detention camps and all that. Huh? Well, the detention camps were on the Civil War camp used to detain Native Americans and other ethnic backgrounds back in the day. Some of the finest Civil War buildings are on the west side of the island in the state of California. Huh? No, yeah, it's fine. Oh yeah, it's real. Look at the view here. Yeah. We're almost up there at the high up on the island overlooking the San Francisco Bay. It's a phenomenal bay. It really is. Shame that it's polluted. You can't eat half of the fish, you catch garbage. Because, humans are just destroying the bay, which is why the Native Americans were so hostile. Because when the immigrants came here, everything got destroyed and rebuilt. The Miwoks inhabited this island for hundreds of years, thousands. It's a very sacred island. There's probably some Native American burials here as well. People did die on this island, You
done with the drink?
It could be haunted. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the detention discharge camps of 1898 to 1905, as opposed to, you had the detention and discharge camps. Quarantine station was kind of detention as well. The island is about detention. It was not just about detention. It was also about protecting the country and processing the immigrants. It's what it was directed at, and troops too. Perimeter Road. There's the immigration station. Like I said, though, it wasn't always a immigration station. Fort McDowell. Wow.
Sorry.
It wasn't always an immigration station. It was later on, it became a detention discharge camp during a short time. Must be the immigration detention center. I see buildings, and it says from these buildings it's like 10-15 minutes to the other place. You know what I'm saying? The other place is huge. They have military barracks 4 stories high. 4 stories. It's all abandoned. It's all open. I took a picture from San Francisco of it, all abandoned. You can see all through it, but I have pictures on the internet. But there's only one picture online of the barracks, and I'm surprised people haven't gone here and taken more. People camp here. They should be getting their camera and taking photos and adding them. No. Well, maybe. There might be. I don't know. They don't want people there so they don't get hurt.
I mean, you would assume people would be good pictures.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, on a lot of websites, people, my friends do what I do, but they urban explore. They don't really paranormal investigate, but they go do abandoned places and do black and whites in them. Because, the black and whites come out good, right? Well, most people, there's a group of people out here that do that stuff, and they don't even have pictures. So I'm thinking that it might be inaccessible, even if it is abandoned, But it's okay. Hopefully, if we could get this place done, these 2 places, we could zip back and do the Civil War fort in time. Because it's not, the Civil War fort is only about a 20-minute walk. It's pretty. There's the Civil War fort, Camp Reynolds they used to detain the Indians and also war criminals and stuff, but the Civil War fort has 2 of the best buildings in the state of California, 2 of the most well-intact structures dating back to that era. So, you're dealing with 150-year-old structures made out of brick and wood. This is kind of cool, huh? There's a bunch of they're not abandoned, but they're restored. Look, there's wood buildings, there's a barracks, or like where they detain everyone. We'll definitely check it out. It's on the way. That cliff all the way down. You don't ever want to get too close to these cliffs.